The Blue Princess. In the kingdom of Azurath, where the sky met the sea in an endless embrace of sapphire, there lived a princess unlike any other. Princess Celeste was born under a rare celestial event, a blue moon that cast its ethereal glow across the entire realm. From that moment,
and who proved that the most valuable crown was the freedom to choose. He meant serving.
And
who proved that the most valuable crown was the freedom to choose.
Of midnight blue, shimmering like the ocean under starlight, her eyes held the depth of the deepest seas, and her skin had a faint luminescence, as if moonlight lived just beneath the surface. The people of Azurath adored her, calling her the Blue Princess, a living embodiment of their kingdom's most sacred element. But Celeste felt the weight of her uniqueness like chains of silk, a beautiful, yet binding. Her parents, King Aldrich and Queen Marin, had raised her in the palace's tallest tower, surrounded by tutors and guards, protected from a world they deemed too dangerous for someone so precious. She learned 7 languages, mastered celestial navigation, and could paint the constellations from memory. Yet she had never walked through the market square, never felt sand between her toes, never spoken to anyone beyond the palace walls who wasn't carefully vetted. On her 18th birthday, tradition demanded she choose a suitor from the noble houses. Princes and lords from across the realm arrived bearing gifts of gold, jewels, and promises of expanded territories. They spoke eloquently of alliances and lineages, their words rehearsed and hollow. Celeste sat upon her throne, draped in gowns of cerulean silk, and felt nothing. These men saw only her title, her color, her value as a political chess piece. None asked what she dreamed of, what made her laugh, or what she saw when she gazed at the stars from her tower window each night. That evening, after dismissing the last suitor, Celeste made a decision that would change everything. She waited until the palace slept, then shed her formal gowns for simple traveling clothes. She bound her distinctive hair under a gray cloak and slipped through passages she'd mapped over years of exploring her gilded cage. The night air hit her face like freedom itself. For the first time in her life, Celeste walked streets where no one bowed, where no one whispered "Your Highness" as she passed. She was simply another figure in the darkness, anonymous and alive. She wandered toward the harbor, drawn by the sound of waves she'd only heard from a distance. The docks were quieter now, but a few sailors remained, mending nets and sharing stories. Celeste sat on a wooden crate, listening to their tales of distant lands, of storms and sea monsters, of islands where flowers glowed in the dark. "You lost, miss," a voice startled her. A young man, perhaps a year or 2 older than herself, stood holding a coil of rope. His hands were calloused, his clothes worn, but his smile was genuine. His eyes, she noticed, were the warm brown of sun-weathered wood. "No," Celeste said, surprised by how true it felt. "I think I'm found." His name was Finn, a navigator's apprentice who'd sailed since he was 10. Unlike the nobles who'd courted her with grand proclamations, Finn simply talked about the patterns of migrating whales, the way different stars appeared depending on latitude, the peculiar green flash that sometimes appeared at sunset over open water. They talked until dawn began to paint the sky. Celeste had never felt so seen, so heard. Finn didn't care about kingdoms or alliances, he cared about the tides and the wind, about the stories carried by old sailors and the mysteries still hidden in uncharted waters. "I should go," Celeste said reluctantly as light crept across the harbor. "Will you come back?" Finn asked. She nodded, already knowing she would. For 3 months, Celeste lived 2 lives. By day, she was the Blue Princess, attending state functions and enduring her parents' increasing pressure to choose a husband. By night, she was simply Celeste, meeting Finn at the docks, learning to read the stars for navigation, listening to his dreams of exploring the Meridian Sea. She told him everything of her loneliness, her frustration, her fear that she'd never be more than a symbol. Finn listened, really listened, in a way no one ever had. "You're not just a princess," he said one night as they sat on the bow of his master's ship. "You're someone who memorizes constellations because they're beautiful, who asks about every person's story, who can recite poetry in 7 languages but chooses to learn sailors' knots instead. That's who you are." But secrets, especially royal ones, cannot hide forever. A palace guard spotted Celeste returning one morning. Within hours, she was confined to her tower, and her parents demanded an explanation. "You've compromised your safety," King Aldrich thundered. "Your position, your duty." "My duty?" Celeste's voice, usually so controlled, cracked. "My duty to be isolated, to marry someone who sees me as a trophy? Is that truly what you want for me?" Queen Marin's expression softened. "We want you safe, my darling. We want you to have the life you deserve." "Then let me choose what that life is," Celeste pleaded. "The blue moon didn't choose me to be locked away, it chose me to shine." The king and queen exchanged glances, the kind of wordless communication that comes from decades together. Finally, the queen spoke. "Tell us about him, this sailor." Celeste did. She spoke of Finn's kindness, his intelligence, the way he saw the world as full of wonder rather than danger. She didn't mention love as she barely understood it herself yet, but she spoke of possibility. "Bring him to the palace," the king said finally. "Let us meet this young man who's captured our daughter's trust." Finn came, nervous but honest. The nobles whispered Scandala, a princess and a common sailor, but Celeste stood beside him, her blue eyes daring anyone to question her choice. "Your Majesty," Finn addressed the king directly, "I can't offer your daughter wealth or territories. I can only offer her honesty, respect, and a life where she's free to discover who she truly is." The king studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, He smiled. My daughter has been offered kingdoms and gold. She's been promised power and prestige. You're the first to promise her freedom. Perhaps that's worth more than all the rest. The solution they reached was unconventional. Celeste would not marry immediately, but she would have the freedom to leave the palace, to explore her kingdom and beyond. Finn would continue his navigation studies, and if, after 2 years of living in the real world, they still chose each other, the kingdom would celebrate their union. Celeste threw herself into learning about her people. She visited villages, listened to farmers and craftspeople, understood the struggles and joys of those she'd someday rule. She sailed with Finn, discovering that the world was far larger and more complex than any tower view could show. She was still the blue princessa that would never change, but now she was also Celeste the explorer, the listener, the student of life. Her unique coloring became not a burden but a reminder that being different was a gift, not a curse. 2 years later, when she and Finn stood together before her kingdom, it was a princess who married a navigator, but more importantly, it was 2 people who'd found in each other the freedom to be completely themselves. The blue moon rose that night, just as it had when she was born, casting its gentle light across Azeroth, and Princess Celeste, looking up at that familiar glow, finally understood its message. She wasn't meant to be hidden away like a precious gem. She was meant to shine not from a tower, but out in the world, where light was needed most. The kingdom of Azeroth thrived under her eventual rule, guided by a queen who knew both the heights of palaces and the depths of the sea, who understood that true royalty meant serving rather than being served, and who proved that the most valuable crown anyone could wear was the freedom to choose their own path.